and hopefully you should be able to see it. If not, please let me know. All right, so let's explore further the verge of AI and APIs. There's a lot of going on. We've been already introduced to the changes and the implication on API documentation, but we'll drill a little bit further down into what APIs and AI are doing together. My name is Z. I'm a co-founder and CTO of Superface.ai. Previously, I've been at APRA pioneering the API first, design API first. I'm the author of one of the descriptions format Mehdi was mentioning on his slides. That was a API blueprint. Before I basically started my own consulting and work with the largest enterprises we have on their API strategy and executing the strategy. Now, over the last 5 years, I've been building infrastructure for AI agents, as well trying to build AI agents. And currently, we are pushing the agentic accuracy. I'll talk about it in a moment, as well as agentic payments. So I have, I would say, a lot of insights into the intersection of AI and APIs. So let's look at what it is happening. So this is a diagram I've been using for maybe even the last 8 years or whatnot, and this is what I call API plumbing. So we have an awful lot of people working in the APIs on both sides of the server and client scenario. So on the provider side, you have your API designer. Somebody has to implement the API, test API, document it, publish, build SDKs, build the developer experience, and then of course monitor it before somebody from a consumer side of things can discover the API, try, test it out, get the access, basically purchase the access, if you will, or enter a contract, implement that API in their application, test it, and then maintain the integration forever, right? So this was the status quo. This is an awful lot of people, all of us working in the APIs, connecting basically two pieces of software. And now we are essentially in the agent-to-agent scenarios, we are connecting two pieces of AI, two agentic AI systems together. At which point I really need to ask this question: is this really needed to connect to basically almost sentient AI systems? And that's something I definitely would like to explore. So let's move forward, because I think it's really the time to rethink APIs. This actually, what is on the slide scare me, but it is reality, and I'll be walking through it. The reality really is, and I'll show you in a moment, that AI can integrate APIs. AI can also deliver APIs on the provider side of things, but also it is the user of APIs, and AI will be doing business on top of APIs. So again, all these four points I think are really good reason to start rethinking APIs and start really looking critically at what we are doing. And how we are building and delivering APIs. So let's look a little bit in detail into each of these 4 points. I'll start with the consumer side. So let's talk about integrating APIs, AI integrating APIs, and AI using APIs. Now, these are two distinct things. You can have AI just basically creating the integration. That's something different from AI using that integration. Now, I was thinking it's probably a bad idea to do a live demo on a keynote, but then I really think this is actually worth a million of words if you are all going to see what is possible already today. So I'll open. So hopefully it's all right with the screen sharing. Let me shut down the Chrome. All right. So this is your AI client that you might know. This is Anthropic's Claude desktop application. And when I ask it, hey, prepare me for remind me to prepare the presentation for AI the docs, then it will probably fail because it doesn't have any sense of application that has the reminders. So in order to fix that, I can go to Superface and basically ask Superface to create an integration for me with Todoist. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to run this query like create a task in Todoist, and using live APIs. Look what is going to happen. So what is happening right now, what is actually going on is you are looking at an agent that is using a web search that doesn't know anything about the Todoist APIs. It's really using web or Bing search. It searches the internet for what is this Todoist? Where is this API documentation? And once it finds that API documentation, and I have opened my Todoist application here on the side. So when it finds the API documentation, it will start basically trying to write the integration and also test the integration against the live API. So against all the judgment, I'll just trust this will work out. But this is really literally looking for API documentation of Todoist. Now I need to, of course, authenticate, which I've already done. So going back to this, what you are looking at is this agent reading the documentation, writing the integration code, but also testing that integration. So here in my Todoist application, you can see, hey, buy milk. I never ask it to add that into my inbox. This is the agent figuring out, hey, is this integration working? I'm figuring out the integration from the API documentation. So it might do a few more tests until the agent is happy with that integration, until it deems, hey, this is integration that is working. And once it gets available, it might do a few more runs. So a few more items will be created here by that agent. Again, it's writing that integration. So once this gets successfully tested by AI, it will be automatically pushed to my Claude here. So if I run the same prompt again, let me just refresh Claude really quick. Remind me to prepare the presentation for AI the docs. Well, of course, it doesn't work. Let me give it one more try really quick. It should be working now. It should pick up that integration. It's delivered to that API, Claude through MCP. We'll talk about it in a second. And it should get created in Todoist right away. You can see it already here in my inbox. So going back to this, what really happened was AI was using Google search like you would do when you are tasked to integrate something. It was looking at Todoist developer portal. It was scraping and basically navigating through the developer portal. This is not open API specification. This is nothing, no JSON schema. This is the agent really looking at the web and browsing the web pages, figuring out what to do stuff. Then it wrote the integration, it tested it against the actual API, and it pushed that integration back to that agent to work. So this is AI integrating APIs, looking at the documentation we created for humans. Again, no API descriptions there. At which point, and this is coming from a guy who was spearheading API descriptions and design first. To this point, we need to ask, is OpenAPI really needed? Are these, and it's not really about OpenAPI, but are these description formats really needed? Because we build these with the premise for them to be the machine readable contract. Mehdi already mentioned that. The machine readability is no longer the concern. You just witness that it can go on the web and act basically like a person would do. And it was also meant to be the contract for the design, like for the design first approach. I designed my API first, and then I built upon that. Now, you can have your copilots basically looking at your code base and generating the same content that you are getting now from OpenAPI or any other API description format. So I think this might not be popular, but we really do not need API descriptions format anymore. All right, so that was one big one, AI consuming APIs. You just seen that. And by the way, there was nothing special about Todoist. We just picked it because it's nice and easy to demo and everybody understands that. This can be with anything that is basically online API documentation. All right, now AI consuming API. So that's okay. I have that capabilities from API available to my agent. So what's going on there? What's happening there? Obviously, again, you've seen that I made that available to my Claude agent. So I made that Todoist available in some sort of registry. In that case, I was using MCP server. Agent basically goes and asks, hey, what are the tools? what can I do? Like, what can you do for me? And then it picks the tools and it talks directly. So there is this concept of agentic discovery of the capabilities of what maybe APIs or other data sources are available. What are the capabilities that agent can use? Now, there is a massive reality gap. We would, of course, love these agents to be able to already do stuff. Like, we are very often experimenting in the CRM space, so looking at your task with your Salesforce or HubSpot CRMs, and unfortunately, we are not there just yet. We actually figured out that using CRM task, we are looking at some 25% reliability or success rate, if you will, if you really want to get to reliable, repeatable tasks solved by AI. Now, what you are looking at is 6 tasks that we run 10 times, and the statistics here basically shows the chances that on the very left, at least once out of the 10 runs, all the 6 tasks with HubSpot CRM succeed. So we are looking at the best case at 55% chances that all 6 tasks will succeed at least once. On the far right, that's saying basically we are looking at 25% chances that all 6 tasks will succeed 10 times out of the 10. Now, this is the reality of agentic AI. What are the different lines here? Well, these are the different tooling approaches, so different integration approaches, if you will. The yellow one at the very bottom is pre-made connectors with services like Zapier and Composio. Pre-made connectors are the thing of the past. You remember iPasses, they are saying, hey, we have 10,000 connectors, we have 5,000 connectors, whatever that is. Doesn't matter anymore. These are no good for AI use. Then next, you have the wipe coded using maybe Cursor and some knowledge. You have wipe coded or so code generated integrations. They are doing a little bit better. Then there is HubSpot MCP, so a brand new server released from HubSpot. Amazing work, actually one of the best MCP servers out there. So if you are looking for some inspiration in the MCP space, definitely check them out. And then there is our approach, which is quite special with Superface Intelligent Tool. But that's not the point. The point really here is it's this bad right now. So the tools and the integration with APIs have a tremendous impact, but it's still, the results are still really not good. There are ways to increase the accuracy. And why I'm bringing this here is because they all have to do something with API documentation. On one hand, you can train the models. You can train the models on API documentation. As a matter of fact, OpenAI models, Anthropic models, all of them were trained on a public API documentation. They actually know about HubSpot API and its documentation. So that's one way where you can tweak it, when you can improve the behavior of the agents built on top of it. You can do also model fine tuning, which is basically you taking good and bad examples from API documentation and telling model, hey, if this response happens, you need to, I don't know, tweak these parameters or whatnot. Then you can write the tools. These are your custom integrations. So using pre-made connectors are not going to cut it anymore. So you can start programming the integration specifically for agentic use cases. You can have intelligent tools like maybe what Superface is bringing, or you can have some really, really good MCP servers, such as from the HubSpot. So those 3 are, and maybe arguably model fine-tuning, are controlled by API consumers, so persons who are building agents. And then, of course, on the provider side of things, on API provider side of things, you can document your API for AI. So something Mehdi was already hinting that there is a different approach to documentation when you want to make it useful for AI, and you can redesign your APIs entirely with the AI in mind. I'll be talking about it right now. So building APIs for AI, moving to the API provider side, you can, of course, use a lot of tools that are at your disposal. Code generation is arguably the best application of AI generation or generative qualities. So you can use this to either generate the design. So there's a very handy GPT called Action GPT that's coming directly from OpenAI, which is free. It's out there. You can use it to design your API. and it will spit out the open API specification, even though I just said it's maybe not needed. But this AI agent, basically, you just talk to it and it will start, sculpting the open API specification, the description format for APIs. Now, on the other hand, you can use the plethora of code generative tools like Copilot, Cursor, Windsurf to generate your service entirely. So again, back then we were like bringing mock services for people who wanted to prototype rapidly from API descriptions. But these are no longer needed because you can really quickly generate a stub server to verify the design of your API. Yeah, and as I already mentioned, you can go the other way around. You can generate documentation from a code base and entirely using the same tools. Last but not least, testing, API testing with AI. You just seen how agent building integration can actually test that API, make those calls, learn from it, tweak the arguments, tweak the parameters before it prepares that integration. So those are all the things that are at disposal for, and many more, of course, for you if you are API provider. Now, for the design itself, I won't go into much detail. We just covered this with Emmanuel Paraskakis. I suggest you watch the recording of the session we did, I think, a month ago. That is like this handy checklist: what to do, how to optimize your API design, API documentation for AI consumption. So I just leave it here, and you can go and watch this by yourself. Now, again, as I mentioned, documentation plays the critical role for AI consumption. It's basically essential for the successful use by AI. In the first place, it controls the AI. It helps AI to decide what tool to use. And by tool, I'm mixing the terms here, but by basically when I say the tool, I'm referring to API endpoint, but tool can be anything from one API endpoint call to multiple API endpoint calls to calling a databases to doing some computation, whatever it is. Our documentation helps agents to understand, hey, this is probably the tool, this is probably the endpoint that you want to use. It also helps AI to understand how to use that endpoint and maybe what other endpoints to call. To illustrate this, I'll call Salesforce CRM. So there, if you want to create a contact, you might have some custom fields. Now, Dave Grohl is a drummer and singer, so AI knows that. So it might be guessing, hey, I don't know what this type C is, but let's try a drummer, right? But if you, in your documentation, mention, hey, these are custom fields with the _C, and these are defined under /describe endpoint relevant to that endpoint that you want to use, that will be enough for AI to pick this successfully and make the API call successfully. So again, this is nothing new. Like a human developer would also need to have that knowledge that they should figure out the types maybe first before they are actually calling this endpoint. But I'm just basically reiterating on what should have been obvious over the last 20 years, that you need to be concise and thorough in your API documentation. All right, so API documentation was always the heart of APIs, as it was already mentioned. And essentially, it is the instructions for engineers how to program API clients, and it's the rise and fall of API developer experience. Now, if we transition to the AI world, it's the instructions for AI how to use your API, and it is the same thing. It is the rise and fall of AI success. If you have bad API documentation, the AI won't work with your API. Now, there are two big problems with API documentation. One, it's usually missing the description of the business processes, the details about the business side of APIs, and maybe even more importantly, the documentation is out of the band, or the information are transferred out of the band, meaning they are not transferred with the API itself. They are some information that are usually prepared at the design time when the API is being built. And as such, we saw a lot of versioning problems where basically the information and API documentation were not what was implemented in the actual API. Now, Model Context Protocol, by now, I'm pretty sure you heard about it. It's a way for API providers to share their capabilities with AI in a uniform manner. Now, important thing to say is it's getting the traction, it's getting the momentum. All the big LLM models are already basically supporting it one way or another. Anthropic, OpenAI, Google Gemini, Microsoft built it into their Windows, but providers are also embracing it. So there are really nice servers from GitHub and MCP and and HubSpot and many others. I would say there is a lot of bad sentiment and misunderstanding from my fellow API colleagues that this might be not needed. This is yet another abstraction layer. And while I hear their concerns, I'm not necessarily in agreement with them. I think the model context protocol has a lot of flaws. It's not solving everything, but it's, again, bringing the uniform interface not only to APIs, but also data sources, databases, and computation. So it's not just about APIs. It's helping AI to interact with the capabilities. Now, why I'm talking about is this concept of tools in MCP has two related to API documentation, and that is the description of a tool, which you can see. This is actually taken from the actual MCP specification. Should be a human readable description, and the title should be a human readable title for the tool. So this is essentially your pieces of API documentation being put into this protocol. And this is also the reason why HubSpot MCP is working so well, because they have a very thorough descriptions here and very thorough titles that are helping AI to use their capabilities correctly. Now, important thing here is this documentation is interpreted at the runtime. It's interpreted when the client, where the agent is running. This is no longer interpreted before somebody programs the client. This is interpreted when the client is running, when the agent, when the AI is running. This is super important thing about the MCP. It allows you to transfer the documentation just in the time when it is needed, not 6 weeks upfront, so somebody can program something. This is why this is essential for success of AI and for APIs and AI moving forward. This enables self-describing API because you can generate this on the fly from your server, feed it to your AI clients, and they will pick it at the runtime. So if you change your API, it's all right. You just change the description here and it will work. No more versioning problems. All right. One last thing I want to mention. This is at the intersection of both consumers and providers, and this is my last point, that AI will do business on top of APIs. This will be A to A, B to B, agentic, agent to agent, business to business. We are starting small. We are starting with digital capabilities. We are basically having this concept of buyer and seller agents that are, again, discovering each other, discovering the capabilities, and entering into the contract. This is also maybe one of the first good applications for digital currencies, for maybe stable coins, because you will have a lot of small trends that are happening that are really not expensive by themselves. So I don't know, do this work, generate that image, whatever that is, right? So agent want to generate an image of something, so it asks the other agent, it will charge him whatever, 2 peanuts, right? You don't want to be using classical money for it, but most importantly, you don't want to have a human in the loop. That's where really digital currency, cryptocurrencies, if you will, shine. So this is another field that's very exciting. On the other hand, you might have very soon, we've seen already demos like agents going on the website and making the purchases. But we will get to the situation where you have your buyer agents and they will basically go and buy from whatever, Shopify, Amazon websites and whatnot, the actual physical goods. And this all will just only lead towards the agentic B2B. Now, documentation of the business processes is essentially here. Terms and conditions will be also needed, of course, the prices and whatever are the legal aspects of making business fully digital will still need to be figured out. All right, so to wrap it up, we are really not at the start of the transformation. It has already happened. We are moving from human-centric. So until basically LLMs, we were like human-centric APIs, as I call it. Mehdi already basically hinted it. So this was until 23. So this is already happening. We are now looking, and that was the demo I've shown you at the start, we are now looking at machine processing of human-centric APIs. So we have this API documentation made for human, not API descriptions. API, like could be PDF, whatever. So we are already machine processing these to make the integration happening on the fly. And we are starting to see the first self-describing APIs. Again, thanks to the MCP, because that's feeding the API descriptions, API documentation at the runtime to the clients, to the point where I would reckon 10 years, 7 years from now, we'll have machine-only APIs, because to me, it won't make sense for human engineering to do that and developers and writers and everybody to do that work only to connect to two pieces of software together. Now, as for API documentation, again, I think it's very clear. We need it better than ever. You've seen it's like everywhere. It's basically what models know is coming from API documentation. How AI agents are working, how successful they are, it's also coming from the API documentation. So right now, I would say it's the peak of API or peak of the importance of API documentation, because all the models are trained to use that, and all the agents are basically figuring out how to interact with the world using the API documentation. API documentation is used at the client runtime. This is a massive change to what was happening 10 years ago. It is used at the runtime, not before the runtime. It might be used by AI at the runtime when the agents are trying to do something. And it's a form of prompt for AI. However you take it, I leave that with you. But think about this. It's being used at the runtime. It's no longer a design time thing. And it's basically a way for you to prompt AI agents that are using your APIs. So thank you very much. I'll be happy to follow up and chat. You can hit me on LinkedIn and ask any questions that you might have. Thank you.